All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. My name is Rick Butler. To my left, that is Ryan Schumpert as we sit here for another Tennessee football postgame breakdown. Ryan, how are you doing today? It's about 10:30 p.m. right now. That's a lot better than when we normally record this thing.
Yeah, no, the one non-night game for Tennessee at home in SEC play, it didn't turn into a night game, but a lot of extracurriculars, we'll say, after the game pushed things back a little bit, pushed this one back a little bit later. But like you said, still a lot earlier than a lot of these shows have been at.
That was the longest wait that we've had for Josh Heupel so far this season.
Yeah,
I would imagine that it will continue to be that way. Why, though? Why did all of that happen? Why was there a commotion on the field? Why are there chunks of grass taken out of Neyland Stadium's field? Well, because the third Saturday in October happened. Tennessee defeats Alabama. Number 11 Tennessee, I should say, defeats number 7 Alabama by a score of 24-17. Just to skip right to the end real quick, just to kind of go ahead and get out of the way. Once again, pandemonium after Tennessee defeats Alabama. It kind of started over in the north end zone section. It was the recruits, and that's actually right where I was. Saw them coming down. It felt like Tennessee kind of had things in check. I looked over at the student section. It didn't seem like there was too much movement. But then the floodgates open. Tennessee's fans, they stormed the field. The field is painted orange and another orange out. And once again, the grounds crew is left to deal with the mess. But again, another what's the word I want to use here? Photogenic, just kind of one of those. A very memorable scene from Knoxville.
Yeah, it was. Definitely very different than the storming of the field 2 years ago, but maybe that was fitting because it was a very different football game than the one that occurred 2 years ago on this field.
And there's a lot of people that aren't thrilled about the storming of the field. I'm sure people will make their opinions heard on this video, on YouTube, on social media, wherever it is. But let's go ahead and talk about the game. As always, go and check out all of our work over at RockyTopInsider.com, and make sure you're checking in and subscribing to the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. There is a boatload of great stuff on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube page right now, including a 7-minute video of the field storming. We've got Josh Heupel press conference. We've got the quarterback speaking to the press conference. We've got a ton of stuff going on, and of course, Ryan and I's instant reaction from the field. But now we're bringing it up back here to the box, where we expand things out a little bit. Again, Tennessee defeats Alabama 24-17. We should probably start by talking about the defense, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. They were pretty good tonight, huh?
No doubt about it. Once again, in a game where Tennessee really struggled to get anything going offensively, especially in that first half. Tennessee's defense continued to hold them in the game, and then it was Tennessee's defense that really closed out the game as Alabama was searching desperately for points, could not find them. Tennessee's defense really stood on their head tonight.
They did. They were fantastic again. I think you saw it maybe in a little bit of a different way. It wasn't just the defensive line being dominant and super disruptive. I feel like they created even less negative runs than they have in a lot of these games, even though they only gave up 75 yards on the ground. They didn't give up a lot of big runs. And I do think you kind of saw them miss Keenan Peely a little bit in the run game tonight, which is a funny thing to say given they only gave up 75 rushing yards. And the pass rush wasn't just dominant. They did, they got to Jalen Milroe a handful of times, a couple of those times blitzing. They made him uncomfortable enough to really affect him. But I thought the secondary was just fantastic tonight. The defensive backfield played at a really high level, and I think that what I said about Jalen Milroe, that was the thing that stood out the most. They held him incredibly in check. 25 of 45, 239 yards passing, 1 touchdown, another interception. More importantly than that, 14 carries for 11 yards. That's where Jalen Milroe is dangerous. That's where he's as good as anybody in the country, heck, better than anybody in the country, the quarterback spot of what he can do running the football. And Tennessee held him in check. I guess a couple sacks in there tonight. I'm not sure what the final number was when it comes to sacks for Tennessee's defense. 3 is what they had. So some negatives in there, but even on designed runs, they did a good job. Scrambles, he wasn't able to do much. I thought they did a really good job containing him. And they did a really good job containing him at times when they ran man defense, which obviously is a lot harder. You got everybody with their backs turned to the quarterback. It really puts a lot of pressure on whoever your blitzers are to hold gap integrity and not let them make plays. And I thought they did a great job of that tonight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You were talking about Jalen Milroe right there. It kind of got my wheels turning in my head. Went over to look at his game log for the season so far. He's had I wondered if this was maybe one of his lower passing performances for the year. He's had a couple of games against South Florida. He threw for 194. Against Wisconsin, he threw for 196. So, certainly some games lower on that.
Yeah, but what I will say, just looking at it, and you might have been getting here, so sorry if you did. 26 pass attempts against South Florida, 17 against Wisconsin, 23 against South Carolina, 45 tonight. Most times he's thrown all season. And you go look at the rushing numbers in that game. Only Vanderbilt and South Florida, I guess, both held him to less rushing yards than Tennessee did tonight. But he did a lot more on the ground against South Carolina, certainly against Georgia, and then also last week against I said South Carolina. Already.
Yeah. I mean,
just to repeat myself, South Carolina.
There you go. He had 12 more passing attempts than he did previously against Georgia, which 45 now is a new season high for him. But you also look at it. Tonight was his lowest completion percentage by a pretty good margin at only 55.6%. It was by far his lowest rating for a game this season so far at only 98.6. It was his lowest quarterback rating of the game so far. And then it looks like on 14 carries, 0.8 rush yards per attempt is his second lowest, term game in terms of yards per attempt on the ground as well. So in a number of different ways, we were kind of figuring all this out as we were talking through it, but in a number of different ways, Tennessee held Jalen Milroe in check, which was maybe the most important thing. We know that Ryan Williams is a freak of nature. We know what he can do. We know that Alabama's got a bit of a running game as well. But Jalen Milroe is an X factor. He will always be. He's one of those types of players in college football, and Tennessee might have given him his worst game of the season so far.
Yeah, and he's a difference maker. And
yes,
you mentioned Ryan Williams. Shades of Cedric Tillman at Pittsburgh in 2022. Alabama just throwing it to Ryan Williams over and over again.
Him.
18 targets, 8 for 73 and a touchdown in that. But Tennessee did a good job. It wasn't just Jermod McCoy on him. Ricky Gibson was on him some, but Jermod McCoy, he won some big battles, lost some battles too, but he held his own against one of the best receivers in the country. And Jeremy Bernard, I thought it was almost more interesting. 5 catches for 72 yards on just 5 targets. Felt like a guy maybe Alabama should have thrown the ball more to. But Jermod McCoy was great again. He was elite. One sequence I do want to talk about, Jermod McCoy goes out in the second half. I don't know what drive would this have been.
He takes that knee.
He took the knee. I guess this would have been when Tennessee the game was tied, right? 14-14, I think. Game was tied. I want to say the game was tied 14-14. Pretty sure that's what happened.
14-10, I think it was. I don't think they were tied at 14, but I'm checking right now.
Whatever. You find out where the game is. But at a big point in the game in the second half, Jermod McCoy goes out. Alabama's right in Tennessee red zone. Second down, they go right at Ricky Gibson, throw a little fade route to Ryan Williams. Might have got away with a little bit of pass interference, but an incomplete pass. They went right back to it again. Ricky Williams on Ryan Williams, man-on-man that time. Fantastic coverage from Ricky Gibson. Absolutely no penalty. And Tennessee held Alabama to a field goal at that point in the game, which felt like a really, really big play.
I believe it was the Alabama drive number 7, where they missed the
I don't think so.
Field goal.
It was the drive
they hit before that.
It was the drive.
The 3-play 8-yard punt.
No, it was the field goal drive. Alabama kicked the field goal. This was 3:11 left in the third quarter. They kicked the field goal to go up 10-7. Is what it was. Alabama kicked the field goal to go.
Wrong. Okay.
Alabama
10
kicked
plays,
the field
58
goal.
yards. I see what you're saying.
They kicked the field goal to go up 10-7. Tennessee answered with a touchdown to take the lead, and then you're right. It was never tied at 14. So it was 14-10, and then Alabama answered that next drive with a touchdown to make it 17-14. But it was after Tennessee's first touchdown drive of the night. Game was tied. Felt like it could have been a huge kind of momentum breaker, something to kind of flip the game. And I thought that was a huge sequence by Ricky Gibson. And again, Tennessee's defense, I wondered if the dam would break at some point and some of these teams would start capitalizing more on scoring opportunities. Is a big reason why I picked Alabama in this game. Jermod McCoy, a huge interception in the end zone. And then Tennessee forced a couple field goal attempts, that being one of them, real deep in their own territory.
Yeah, Tennessee's defense played about 8 more minutes than the offense tonight. That drive that you're talking about right there where Alabama does make the field goal, that was sandwiched in between 2 Tennessee touchdowns, the Dylan Samson 2-yard run and then the Dylan Samson 3-yard run as Tennessee was making their way into the fourth quarter. You talk about Jermod McCoy right there. He was a player who really stood out to me tonight, but not just tonight. I think about the last few games that Tennessee has had and what it means to have a truly talented cornerback in the SEC. I think there's been plenty of times where if Tennessee did not have Jermod McCoy in these games, then there'd be different stories to some of these games. We could never go back and know, but I truly believe that. You know, one of the funny things about last week is that a lot of comments on the YouTube, right, on the social media. They wanted more questions for Jermod McCoy at the press conference. They were very loud about it. We appreciate you commenting on these videos. Well, Jermod McCoy was not available for a post-game press conference here today, but I definitely think that he deserves us talking about him a little bit because of the game that he played. The easy play to go to and start off with is the interception right here in the corner of the end zone. I'm trying to figure out where that game was.
It was still 0-0, I think, late first quarter maybe.
Yes, late first quarter.
Yeah, 3:42 left in the first quarter.
That's right. That was an 8-play, 48-yard drive. That was taking 4 minutes off the clock with the interception. Had that interception not happened, that drive might have gone 5 minutes. It might have even gone 6 minutes. Alabama could have put in an easy touchdown to get their first touchdown of the game before that play to Ryan Williams later on. That was a huge play by Jermod McCoy, and there were certainly more, but I really like the way that he had that. I have not gone back and watched the play. I think he might have baited Milroe a little bit because that's kind of what Jermod McCoy likes to do. He likes to play some eye games with the opposing quarterback, but again, just to kind of wrap all that up in a nutshell, it's really important to have a really talented cornerback in SEC play.
Yeah.
Tennessee has that in Jermod McCoy.
Yeah, so a micro thought. A great play. I don't really know if he baited him. I think it was just a little bit underthrown. Okay. Maybe I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be more of a fade, like the high point or a back shoulder throw.
Yeah.
Now here's a question for you. Okay. Is that a one-handed interception? Because he knocks the ball down with one hand, but he kind of deflected it back into his body and then caught it with two hands.
Yeah.
Another incredible play, nonetheless. I don't know if it's technically a one-handed interception though.
This might maybe I should have a better standard.
A higher
as a
standard.
Reporter, as a journalist, a higher standard. But if I'm making that play, playing pickup football back with the guys back in the day, that's a one-handed interception until the day I go to my grave.
I think that's fair.
But maybe I should have higher expectations for these guys. I think you can say yeah.
Yeah,
let us know in the comments. What do you think? Is
know.
Jermod McCoy's interception a legitimate one-handed pick? It was impressive either way.
Yes,
but does it go down in the books as a true one-handed interception?
He broke up the pass with one hand and he intercepted it. So that is a fact for sure.
Really nice.
Macro thought.
Please.
And Tennessee's defense as a whole been great all season, and it's kind of like, all right, what will they do as the test gets harder against a really stout Alabama offense? I think it's just exemplified by the defensive back room. It was like, what will the secondary look like? These teams haven't been able to test it, especially in North Carolina State and Oklahoma really couldn't. And Arkansas made some plays down the field. Florida, I think, tested it more than a lot of teams did. We saw it tonight, and they were great. And Jermod McCoy, there was so much turnover in that defensive backfield, which is why that was a big talking point all offseason.
Yep.
Jermod McCoy comes in. He's been fantastic. Ricky Gibson is a guy that, not that he's just been stellar, but he's been steady. He's been good for a true sophomore. Those corners, we talked about it. Not to pat myself on the back. I talked a lot about I like the corners. I thought at corner Tennessee would be fine, and it's been because of those young guys. They've been good. They've been steady. I think they've been better for the most part than what Tennessee's had. Though last year I think Kamal had him when he was healthy and games really well. He played well. Safety, and I will not pat myself on the back. I was really concerned about what Tennessee had at safety. I think they've answered a lot of questions there. Will Brooks has been great. He obviously has the game-sealing interception tonight, but he made a lot of plays, solid in coverage. Shoestring tackle on Jalen Milroe that saved what would have been a long touchdown. We'd be talking about Jalen Milroe's rushing stat line a lot different if Will Brooks doesn't make that tackle. So he makes some plays on return time. Probably has been the guy that hasn't been great, but he made a big third down designed run for Jalen Milroe. Good big tackle on him early in the game. I think right before Tennessee's first touchdown drive of the night. And then Jacoby Thomas just continues to wreak havoc in the run game. Maybe
that one play that he had was nasty.
Maybe not fantastic in pass coverage. Not like that's not his strength, but he's been a plus player for Tennessee, and that's a guy I particularly touted a lot in the offseason. So, hey, hand up there. That's on me.
On that point too, with Jacoby Thomas, I've said this a couple times now. I feel like it's a broken record. It's not just a point I keep going back to, although it kind of is. Tennessee lost their enforcer of the defense with Keenan Peely.
Yeah.
I understand that Jacoby Thomas is not a starter. I understand that he's rotating with some of these guys, but he might be that next candidate for Tennessee's enforcer.
He's a big hitter.
A guy who can go down, who can lay down the lumber, who can rattle a guy's helmet right off of his head. Tennessee needs a guy like that in the defense. Every great team does, and it's good to have.
Yeah, I know he plays downhill. He's a physical safety. Continues to make plays in the run game. He had to sack in the game against NC State. I think between Jacoby Thomas and Boo Carter, Tennessee have 2 defensive backs that are really good at rushing the passer in some of his blitz plays. So all that to say, and Boo Carter played well tonight. Heck, Jalen McMurray got in there, got some run, played pretty well. Tennessee secondary just I think really aced the test against the best passing attack in the NFC. Jalen Milroe missing throws makes things look a lot easier. Alabama had some plays they were just a little bit off on, but we talked about it, or I think we talked about it. I know I wrote about it as one of my keys. Big plays were going to be such a big thing in this game.
Oh yeah.
Boy, Tennessee had a chance to hit a whole lot more of them than they did. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But Alabama did not hit any big plays tonight in the passing game, and that's about what that offense does best. So a huge testament to Tennessee's defensive backfield.
Yeah, I don't even remember to your point just then, and correct me if I'm wrong. It is late. There's been a lot that's happened between now and the end of the game. But whereas Tennessee felt like they were just not connecting on a lot of explosive shots, it just didn't even feel like Alabama maybe really had them even available.
No,
even
they weren't open, guys. No.
There weren't a ton of even opportunities for a mishap or for an incompletion or something like that. It's just that Tennessee's secondary did a great job of bottling up some really talented, nasty receivers for Alabama.
Yeah, no, they really did. And you're right. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it. Alabama didn't take too many shots down the field to begin with. Tennessee kind of made them throw it in the intermediate, which is where Jalen Milroe has not been very good at in his career, and he was not very good there today. And I'm trying to think. I can think of like one deep shot they really took in this game. Jermod McCoy had good coverage on it, right down the sideline. Tennessee's sideline.
Yes.
And I'm sure there were more too. I'm not thinking about, but there weren't a ton of them.
By the way, real quick before we move on to the offensive side of the ball, you talked about. So you actually had a really good. This is a pretty good way to set up this story as I'm thinking about it as I talk it through it. When Ryan got up to this press box, when Ryan and I both did to start this video recording right here, he said, "You know what? It was really cool that when Will Brooks had that interception, you could kind of see the cigar smoke going up at once because we have a really good angle of it. We're way up here high in Neyland Stadium. That's pretty cool. That's obviously it's resulted from the Will Brooks interception. Will Brooks, the guy who we've talked about plenty, but you got to go into a little bit more of a deep dive into Will Brooks and his journey to Tennessee over the last week or two, didn't you?
Yeah, and I wrote a feature story on him. Was thinking about it for this game. A kid from Vestavia Hills, Alabama.
Good just timing on your story.
Just south of Birmingham, 65 miles from the University of Alabama. Grew up an Auburn fan, so maybe sweet in a different way to make the game-sealing interception against Alabama. But not an Alabama fan growing up close to Alabama. But, talked to some high school football coaches, his dad, Will himself. Good insight on the story. It was a fun story to do. And I, one thing I'll just say, his defensive backs coach texted me after the game. Defensive backs coach at Vestavia Hills is an Alabama fan and just texted me saying, really thanking me again for the story and said, how excited he was for Will and what an awesome game Will played. And pretty cool moment. A little bit, I'm sure a lot of angry Alabama people in the Birmingham area, but at least a couple. Maybe a little bit more happy than they would be otherwise.
Again, you can go and find this post on RockyTopInsider.com. It's titled "How Will Brooks Went from Unknown Alabama Recruit to Tennessee Football Starting Safety." You just mentioned that coach from a second ago. I believe this is probably the same guy, but this article ends with a phenomenal quote. My favorite in the whole story. This is what he says. Todd Evans. Thank you for the time for this story. Quote: "I'm an Alabama guy. And here's one of my favorite people playing for Tennessee, so I get torn. I'm always pulling for Will Brooks. I don't care if they're playing Alabama or not because I'm a bigger Will Brooks fan than I ever would be an Alabama fan." That to me, without knowing the guy personally, that to me tells me all I need to know about who Will Brooks is, the kind of impact that he's made on the people around him, the sort of humility and humbleness that he's had along his journey. So again, make sure you go ahead and check out that story. It's phenomenal by Ryan.
Yeah, and to your point, and you were sitting in there recording, and I was kind of working on some other stuff off the side, but it sounded like Aaron Carter went on a little bit of a tangent talking about Will Brooks and what a good teammate he is and how he does things the right way. So a lot of that in the story reflected from people that have known him for a while, and some more of that from his teammates today, too.
Just in total transparency, going back to the preseason, a lot of guys talked about how smart Will Brooks was, how Jermod McCoy, I think, specifically said that he would go directly to Will Brooks if he had questions about the defense. one of my preseason thoughts was just, what's Will Brooks' role going to look like? Is he going to be more one of these player coaches on the sideline who is, an unlimited bank of knowledge about this game and about the position, but maybe it doesn't always come together on the field? Man, through these first 6 games, he's had some really impressive moments. He's had some huge moments for Tennessee. He's not just a smart guy playing football. He's not just a smart guy at football. He's a smart guy playing football, and I think that's been an important kind of realization for me over these first 6-7 games of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. One line in there, because big reason why he didn't get recruited is not the fastest guy, but one line from Todd Evans said, not a lot of false steps. He plays very confident in himself, knows what to do out there. What do you say we pivot over to the offense?
Yes, let's pivot to the offense. I am going to take a quick pause right now. I know we're recording. I see it recording, so everyone's hearing this. Just want to make sure our video is coming through nicely. You'll see us just like this. Back. Yes, we are. We're back. Magically have a Diet Coke in hand. Talked about the defense for a minute. Just kind of shift over to the offense. And let's get to the elephant in the room, because I think that's what a lot of people are talking about after this game, or thinking about after this game. 3 straight games now. I believe we talked about it last week. The first 43 games of the Josh Heupel era at Tennessee had points scored in the first half. Now they're at 3 games in a row where Tennessee does not get any points on the scoreboard in the first or second quarter. Now, they did put up 24 points in the second half. Tennessee got some things going. I thought that Nico Iamaleava started to find his stride a little bit, started to get a little bit more comfortable in the game. But once again, Tennessee struggled on offense, and that first quarter was really bad. The second quarter wasn't any better. But that was a tough quarter to watch. And if it wasn't for Tennessee's defense, like we mentioned a second ago, that deficit was probably going to be a little bit worse. But Tennessee also missed some big chances in that first half. So it's kind of a weird one to go back and think about, but struggles continue for a bit. Yeah,
for sure. And, it's funny, crazy to think about, because this is off next week, and then we'll play again on November 2nd. 0 first half points for Tennessee in the month of October in the year 2024. Tennessee didn't score a single point in October. There's their last game in October. I think it was the first time since 1963 that Tennessee had been shut out in the first the first half, of 3 straight games. And I think the thing that's interesting about it, or maybe more frustrating from the Tennessee fan standpoint, is that Arkansas game, Tennessee didn't have a whole lot there. Florida game, it felt like they were close to making some plays. It felt like Tennessee could do just about whatever they wanted in the first half of this game. Tennessee only punts one time, but again, self-inflicted mistakes or inability to connect on these big plays really, really cost them. Samson fumbles in the red zone. Nico Iamaleava throws an interception in the red zone. Gaston Moore threw an interception when he came in after Nico got hurt. 2 missed field goals. A wide open squirrel white for what should have been about a 30-yard touchdown. Tennessee, Nico overthrew another one that wasn't as wide open, but Chris Brazell opened down the field on a 3rd down. Would have been a touchdown, or at least a big game with a long throw. Iamaleava overthrows him. So just so many missed opportunities. I mean, Tennessee scored 0 points in the first half, and it felt like there was a legitimate case to be made. Let me try to do some quick math on it here. There was a legitimate case to be made that they could have scored like 28 points in the first half. I mean, that's executing at a really high level for them to do that, but for them to score none, it just felt crazy. And it's just like, man, this offense cannot get out of its own way at times right now.
Yeah, I think it was at maybe the 6-7-ish minute mark of the second quarter. I think we were talking about it with our good friend Ben McKee, and we were saying that, hey, Tennessee should have 21 points on the board right now. On an uncharacteristic fumble from Dylan Samson on the opening drive.
First of his career, I believe.
Nico Iamaleava, he's struggled with interceptions a little bit so far this season. He had his one in the first half. He had a bad one in the second half. I believe that's when those 2 came in. But yeah, just more things that Tennessee needs to go back to the drawing board, needs to fix. Josh Heupel continues to say in his post-game press conference that he doesn't feel like they're too far off. He acknowledges that it's not always clicking on the right cylinder, but he continues to believe that it's not too far off. And I think you saw more shades of that in the second half.
Yeah.
You saw more shades of that as the game went on. And frankly, Tennessee needed that. As good as the defense was, as good as the running game was in the second half, they needed the offense to click together on a whole. That includes the passing game, which it started to certainly. But Josh Heupel doesn't believe they're too far off. But they've got more opportunities down the road. Fortunately for Tennessee, they do get a bye week now. Granted, we said that going into the Arkansas game. But you'd always take another opportunity to to try to get the wheels turning, to grease up the wheels a little bit more, if you will. But that's kind of the way that I saw things.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you saw in the second half, not all those plays are on Nico. Squirrel White dropped one, a play he just has to make down the field.
He didn't come back after that, did he?
No, he didn't. He was banged up. Not to say it was an easy play, but a play that's got to be made. But a lot of credit to Nico. He bounced back and played well in the second half. I mean, not perfect, still a couple throws that were missed, but he was a lot better. I think it was a 27-yard scramble on Tennessee's first touchdown drive to set him up inside the 10-yard line. His best ball of the season on a 3rd and 6 around, in Tennessee's own territory on their second touchdown drive, which he just dropped tight coverage, dropped into a bucket that Dante Thornton set him up for his second touchdown, and then another big 3rd down throw for Tennessee's 3rd and final touchdown in the game when he hit a little short fade route to Chris Brazell for a 16-yard touchdown. Those were some big-time throws. He did more on the ground in the second half than he has really at any point this season. So, very bad first half. I mean, I would, not to bash on the guy, I don't want to be too negative or whatever, but I think it was up there with the worst halves that any Tennessee quarterbacks played in Josh Heupel tenure. But with all that, a young quarterback, he bounced back and made some huge, huge plays in the second half, played really well. Certainly, if you're Tennessee, you hope that this sparks something. And again, you talked about it. Josh Heupel's talked about it. The last 2 weeks, they've been so close to connecting on things. Again, not perfect in the second half. They finally start connecting on some of those things. We'll see if in the long term that can spark this offense at all.
It is no coincidence, to me at least, that as Nico Iamaleava started to find his footing a little bit more, as things started to get ramped up, it was also at the same time that the running back was really starting to find their stride. You told me a stat down there. I can't remember if it was in the instant reaction video or not. Do you remember, or do you know Tennessee's first half? Tennessee's first half rush yardage?
I have it in my story. 4 quick takeaways. That was one of them. I think it was like 44 in the first half. I think is what they had total. Maybe 33 from Dylan Samson. Let us see. 44 in the first half, 35 from Dylan Samson. And then in the second half, Tennessee rushed for 150 yards, and my laptop has died on me.
It's died on you? Well,
tough timing.
I got it. 217 minus 44. Is that what you said? 44 yards in the first half?
Yeah, something like that.
$1.73 in the second half?
That sounds right, yeah.
Something around those lines. But no, the point of what I was trying to say was no coincidence.
Yeah.
Those things started to work hand in hand. But Dylan Samson continues to be a real player for Tennessee football. He continues to be such an important figure for this offense. He's a bell cow. He's getting these snaps. 29 rushes on the ground tonight.
That's crazy.
Nico,
you don't see that in college football much.
And you don't see it from a Josh Heupel offense that has loved rotating running backs. Deshaun Bishop had 5. Cameron Seldon got in and actually got a
he got a drive tonight.
He got a drive. He had 1 rush attempt on the night, but again, 26 for Dylan Samson. And this is not a game where Tennessee was up by 30 points and they were just trying to run out the ball. These were runs of physicality to move the sticks, to move the chains, to set up those passing games later on, or those passing plays later on. Dylan Samson continues to be just a wickedly, wickedly important piece for Tennessee.
Yeah, no, he does, and one of the best running backs, not only in the SEC, but in the country. I mean, he's just had a great year. I think his least amount of rushing yards in a game this year is like 94 against Arkansas. He's been over 100 every other game. So he's fantastic, and it seems like a recurring thing. Tennessee's off rushing game a little stagnant in the first half, really gets going in the second half. But I do want to say credit to Tennessee's offensive line. I thought they were much better in this one than they've been. Definitely in any SEC game. Maybe even better than they were in the NC State game. Pass protection was pretty good. I think Nico was sacked just 1 time. I can only think of 1 holding call. They were just solid, and it didn't feel like Nico. Certainly he had to make some plays on the run, but it didn't feel like he was running for his life a ton either in this game. So
no, and it felt like some of those were the design, the rollouts, right?
Yeah,
getting him into space, getting him. And I know that's not what you were directly talking about, but just getting him out of the pocket, it was nice.
Yeah, no, there were a handful of those for sure. So big credit to the offensive line. They stepped up in a big way. And one of the other big things I said and why I picked Alabama was I trusted Alabama's weakness, their defense, more than Tennessee's weakness, their offense. And if you had told me Tennessee scored 24 points, I would have probably told you that I wouldn't have been enough to win. So it's not as simple as that. But really, to me, it felt like Tennessee's offense outplayed Alabama's defense, which again is going to sound crazy for scoring 0 points in the first half. But it was just so many self-inflicted mistakes. It didn't feel like Alabama stopped Tennessee a lot tonight. It felt like Tennessee stopped Tennessee a lot tonight.
Yeah. All right, well, we're pushing on 30 minutes. There's one last thing I would like to get to, sort of a 30,000-foot view thought. Anything left on the offense? Anything left on the defense? Anything left of what we saw on the field here in Neyland Stadium?
No, not a ton.
And we're going to be continuing to break this down throughout the week. We'll jump back in the RTI press pass, even though it's a bye week. We'll get everything down.
Chris Brazell, not a huge game, but a big play. Dante Thornton continues to feel like he's good for one really big play game.
Javonte Payton.
Yeah, it's Javonte.
But Javonte Payton's was more first quarter. Phenom.
Yes, yeah.
Phenom. Dante Thornton.
you don't know when you're going to
come. At some point, he's just going to run straight, or at least run kind of on a one
vertical.
Of these. Post.
One of these, yes.
One of these.
That's the term you're looking for. But yeah, no, I'll throw it back to you. I was going to ramble through something.
Well, I'll tell you what. We knew that when we woke up for church tomorrow morning, when we woke up on Sunday morning, across the land, wherever you are, sounds like I'm setting up something bigger than I am. One of these teams was going to have their playoff chances alive.
Yeah.
The other one was going to be way behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. Life support.
Tennessee's is alive. Yeah. And that's important. Tennessee now 10-2. It's no matter how you thought this Alabama game was going to go, it is in the sights. Now Georgia's playing a pretty darn good game against Texas right now, so that's certainly going to be a challenging game as Tennessee, moves enters that game. But Tennessee's got a bye week coming up. They'll play Kentucky, they'll play Mississippi State, and then that Georgia game. But again, we talked about it. One team would be in a good position, one team wouldn't be, and Tennessee is in the good spot.
Yeah, they are, and it's back to Tennessee being in the solid position for the college football playoff. They got to take care of business against Kentucky, against Vanderbilt, against Mississippi State, a Mississippi State team who, for a while, looked like the worst team in the SEC, sneakily starting to play a little bit better. So maybe not quite as easy as the games to look. But Tennessee's back in a better spot. Alabama, I think they're off next week, and then they head to Baton Rouge, and that's an LSU team that's playing really, really well right now. So it's hard to see the path to Alabama. I mean, they're still there. They still control their own destiny probably, but a challenging matchup in a couple weeks for the Tide.
And I'll tell you what, these are not the ways that I expected Tennessee to win games. They've been a lot uglier than I thought, especially in certain spots than I thought it was going to be before the season. But you don't always need the prettiest of wins. I know that there's a lot of Tennessee fans out there who maybe want a little bit more of a sexy-looking win. But at the end of the day, you put a win on the scoreboard. That's big for Tennessee. They live to fight another day. They live to move into the bye week and then so on and so forth from there with SEC slate coming up. But that's just what you got to do, right? You just got to take care of that next opponent. We've heard Josh Heupel preach this like a broken record time after time after time again. And it is true. Now that discussion, about how good are the wins, that there's a time and a place for that discussion. But as far as the regular season goes, you just got to keep doing whatever it takes to get those things moving.
Yeah, no doubt. And, we could talk about, I think there's obviously still some frustration of this defense being so good and the offense.
Trying to put us back on the screen. That's not, we're
back.
We're back. Hello, everybody.
What a big time operation.
We're about at 35 minutes. We do have a great setup, but we are just dealing with some weird things going on, right? The lights at the field turned off the second the crash happened.
That was strange.
Maybe they're connected.
Maybe they are. Yeah, we get out of here.
35 minutes. Maybe it's best that we just go ahead and we wrap this thing up. This is Ryan Schumpert. If you want to follow him, go follow him at rshump00 on Twitter. Make sure you're also going and finding his great feature story on Will Brooks on RockyTopInsider.com. I am Rick Butler. You can find me at Rick_Butler myself. I don't have a great feature story up right now, but I am also writing over at RockyTopInsider.com.
Down on the field, 7 minutes of the field storming. So go check that out. It's on RTI YouTube page, or hopefully you can find us if things didn't go catastrophically wrong, and then also on the site itself.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass. We'll see you back for the next one. This is Ryan. I'm Rick. And listen to the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast.